seems to be gripping society. The Jews of the United Kingdom are facing attacks from Islamists, they're facing attacks from the extreme left, and now they're facing attacks from the extreme right. Let's talk now to Alex Hearn, Director of Labour Against Anti-Semitism. Great to have you on the show, Alex. Now, I pointed out a few months ago, actually, that characters who were either purportedly supporting Restore Britain or even vocalising on their behalf seem to have some pretty twisted, let's say, tropist anti-Semitic ideas about power and influence in this country. And I'm pleased to see that it's finally made the light of day, because I put out the post from Charlie Downs when he was suggesting that Nigel Farage had been bought by Jewish supporters. I tried to stick that out into the mainstream about 6 months ago, and it's only just been picked up. But the thing is, we can't just sweep this under the carpet. Some of the dialogue, frankly, happening in Restore Britain is chilling.
Hi, thanks for having me on. It is chilling. Lowe has denied the party is neo-Nazi and says that he detests ethno-nationalism, but all the evidence, including his recent comments about King Charles, say otherwise. Because even our king isn't deemed ethnically pure enough for Restore Britain, and presumably would be deported along with the rest of us. You have, like you said, Restore have documented and repeated links to neo-Nazi and white supremacists, individuals and groups, which multiple outlets have covered. For example, it was reported that a former organiser for Britain's largest neo-Nazi group, who calls himself the Nazi Buddhist, was welcomed into the party and has been recruiting fellow ethno-nationalists. So Restore Britain are just the far right in a suit.
Why has it taken so long for people to wake up to this? Because there has been, I would say, a sort of criminal level of silence which has condoned that behaviour for quite a long time now. I've been trying to push this and suggest to people that there's something pretty sinister going on the very, very right wing of UK politics. But I think I was the first person to interview Charlie Downs, challenging him ethno-nationalism by simply asking, OK, you're entitled to that view. If you believe that to be British, you've got to be multiple generations born here, white and Christian, fine. But how is that being prosecuted as a policy? That's all I asked him. You can have that theory if you like, but how does this then end up in a manifesto? And he couldn't answer it. And the pile-on I got, the vitriol, the attacks, the misogyny, the violent rhetoric from supporters of Restore, I've never seen anything like it. It made me feel physically ill at times. And yet the establishment did nothing. Labour were silent. The Conservatives were silent. I think the problem here is when it came to the Makerfield by-election, my understanding was Labour was sort of almost encouraging Restore Britain along because it meant their greatest competitor, Reform, would be losing votes. Why has the establishment for so long just turned a blind eye to this stuff?
I think it's because they underestimated Restore, who, as you rightly said, have now taken 7% in Makerfield. So this is no longer a fringe that anyone can ignore. And anyone who objects to racism should object to Restore Britain because it's sectarian politics. Restore Britain and the Islamists agree on one fundamental point, and that is that real membership of a nation runs through a religious community rather than through citizenship. And those outside of that are here on the terms other people set. Now, Jews have lived under that arrangement before, and it's called protection. And it lasts exactly as long as the protector finds it convenient. So all their talk about remigration, which is often used around Restore, which is understood to mean deporting everyone not considered ethnically British, even if they were born here, that is part of their policy, if you like. So Charlie Downs replied to Nigel Farage's claim that he cannot be bought off with a photograph of Farage standing in front of Jewish Alliance branding. And this is the oldest smear in the book, that Jewish money purchases the loyalty of politicians. And it was delivered as an image precisely so that nothing could be quoted back at him. So we know exactly what Restore are, because Downs is not an anonymous account. He is Restore Britain's campaigns director and its spokesman. And he said, Restore Britain believe that Britain is a people defined by indigenous British ancestry and Christian faith. And when it was put to him that he might mean Judeo-Christian, he said no. So the test of Britishness he proposes is ancestry and Christian faith. And that means that Jews cannot integrate, and neither can any Hindu, Sikh or Muslim under his definition.
Now, when the Labour Party were riddled with anti-Semitism, they were thoroughly investigated by the Equality and Human Rights Watchdog. Do you think the same now needs to potentially happen of Restore and its membership? I'm not one to witch hunt over free speech. I'm not one to tell anyone they have to have a certain ideology. I'm really not. And I'm also pretty right-wing myself. I think there's a lot to say about ensuring that we maintain our Christian values and promote Christianity in this country. I also think it's important that we are very mindful of levels of migration, integration, that people should speak the language, so on and so forth, and be culturally adjacent to us. I think that is of fundamental importance. But as somebody who, you know, has amongst my colleagues, amongst my inner circle of friends, and even in my family, people who are non-white, I am terrified at the ideology of essentially excommunicating or persecuting people who don't happen to be ethnically pure, because that's the politics of Adolf Hitler and Idi Amin.
Yeah, I mean, everyone fails the purity test in the end. And the things that you were talking about, which people have legitimate concerns about, such as immigration, are just kind of entry points for these people.
No, I think you're right. And I do think I'm glad we're having the conversation. I thought I was out there by myself for a long time, if I'm honest, Alex. But good to see this being turned into headlines and properly scrutinised. Alex Hearn, their director of Labour Against Anti-Semitism War. I'm going to get it today, aren't I? All the Restorians, all the Rupertarians watching this. They'll be demonstrating quite how lovely and Christian they are on my timeline, I am sure, in various messages and posts. But if that's you, don't worry, it just reminds me quite why people like you need to be fought against. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now. When I come back,